They say revenge is best served cold. I prefer mine calculated, flared with silence, misdirection, and a smile. My name is Isla Vance. I'm 31 years old. And when I sold my tech company for $20 million, I didn't celebrate. I didn't buy a mansion or post a humble brag online. I booked a quiet Airbnb in Maine, packed one suitcase, and disappeared for 3 weeks, because I needed to think not about the money, but about them. My mother. My sister. The two women who raised me on indifference and manipulation, like it was part of some twisted family tradition. Before I dive into my story, I want to know, where are you watching from today? And as you listen, let me know in the comments how this story makes you feel or if you've ever experienced something similar. Your thoughts mean a lot to me, and I'd love to hear your perspective. That we weren't poor growing up, not even close. My mother, Celeste, married well. Twice. She was one of those women who always looked like she was about to be photographed for a lifestyle magazine. Cold, polished, and always in control. My sister, Nina, was her mirror image, charismatic, sharp-tongued, magnetic. People listened when she spoke, even when she was cruel. Especially when she was cruel, and me, I was the quiet one, the one they never quite knew what to do with. The one who taught herself to code in middle school while they threw brunch parties and sipped imported rose on the terrace. I was invisible, but I remembered everything. The turning point came 3 years ago, back when I was still hustling for seed rounds, trying to keep my startup afloat. My mother came to me with an urgent favor. Nina needed a cosigner for a luxury condo. Just until her next business deal came through. I said no at first. She cried. My mother pressed harder. I caved. 6 months later, they defaulted, and I lost everything I had. No apology. No attempt to repay me. Just excuses and eye rolls, and my mother's condescending, "Well, these things happen, darling." That's when something snapped, not anger. Not even sadness, just clarity. From that day on, I started building my own escape route. My startup, Ether SEC, was gaining momentum. Quietly, steadily, I secured clients, some big, some obscure. We specialized in digital armor, AI-driven cybersecurity for high-risk, high-profile targets. If you wanted to disappear from the grid or protect secrets from hostile states, we were the team to call. And when the acquisition offer came, a full buyout from a German defense firm, I said yes. 20 million wired to my name and no strings. No oversight. And absolutely no one in my family knew a thing about it. That's when the idea came, not out of revenge, out of precision. I wanted to see what they would do when they thought I had something they could take. I converted half the funds into cash. Not for spending, for strategy. The other half I split between cold wallets, digital vaults, and a couple of obscure overseas accounts no one could trace. Then I paid a quiet visit to my mother's estate. The family vault had always been a symbol. It was built into the floor of my grandfather's old study, cold steel under Persian carpet, surrounded by glass cases of antique books no one read. Growing up, I wasn't allowed to touch it. Private, my mother would say. For serious matters. This time, I had a key. I told her I needed to store some sensitive documents for a few weeks. She didn't press. She never did when she thought she still had power over me. She didn't ask what was in the briefcase. She didn't ask why I was locking it myself. She just sipped her espresso and said, "Still chasing shadows, Isla?" And I smiled, because she had no idea I was building a storm in silence. That night, I flew back to Boston with nothing in hand but a decoy laptop and a burner phone. The real data, the kind that mattered, was scattered across cloud dead drops, encrypted and renamed. The real cash was already accounted for, backed up in places only I knew existed. And the money in the safe? Well, it looked like $10 million in fresh, banded stacks, but it wasn't. Not really. Months passed. My mother and sister continued their lives, completely unaware. Nina was posting curated nonsense from spa resorts. My mother was on some board of something, giving speeches about empowered women in finance. Neither of them suspected a thing, but I was watching and waiting for the moment they'd open the vault, waiting for the moment their greed would do what their cruelty never could, trigger a chain reaction I had engineered from the start. This wasn't just about the money. It was about making them believe they had one. Only then would they realize they'd been played. I kept a journal during those months. I wrote in it every night. Not to vent, but to remember. To stay sharp. Because if you're going to dismantle the people who dismantled you, you have to do it cleanly. No raged, no mess, just precision. I wasn't the wounded girl anymore. I was the woman with the blueprint, and everything was exactly where I needed it to be. When I walked into the study and saw the vault door open, I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I smiled. Because that was the moment I knew my plan had begun. It was a Thursday morning. The house was still. My mother's white Lexus was gone. So was Nina's luggage. The scent of her expensive floral perfume still clung to the entry hall like the ghost of someone too arrogant to clean up after herself. The first thing I checked wasn't the safe. It was the kitchen table. A single envelope sat there with my name on it. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. I knew exactly what they thought they had done. 2 days earlier, my mother had called and asked if I'd be staying at the estate that weekend. I said no, I had a last-minute trip to Toronto. She sounded pleased. It was subtle. Barely there, but I knew her. I'd been reading her tone like code since I was a child. The way she said "safe travels, dear" carried the same false warmth she used when plotting behind someone's back. They waited until I left, they opened the vault, they took what they thought was $10 million, and they ran. I walked into the study slowly, the Persian carpet muffling my footsteps. The vault door was wide open. The briefcase inside? Gone. The only thing left was the faint scuff mark of a heel dragging over polished wood. Nina had always been careless. I pulled out my phone and opened the encrypted app I'd built 6 months earlier, Black Fog. A personal surveillance tool. Illegal in several countries. Perfect for moments like this. I tapped into the hidden cameras I'd installed near the garage and main entrance. There they were. 2 nights ago, just past midnight. Nina hauling the briefcase like a trophy. My mother behind her, calm, smug, in control. Always in control. They got into the car and drove off. Without looking back, I hit pause and zoomed in on the briefcase, still sealed. Still locked, still exactly the way I'd left it, which meant they hadn't opened it, yet that was the real game. They thought they'd pulled off the ultimate betrayal. That they'd stolen everything. That I'd wake up to ruin, but what they took wasn't real. The bills were printed on premium polymer stock, authentic in texture, weight, even scent. Marked with serial numbers tied to a single dead-end printing order from a now-defunct prop company I had quietly absorbed. The money could pass casual inspection, but not a single bill would be accepted at a bank. The only thing they stole was time, and I was going to make every second of it count. You might wonder, why didn't I stop them? Why let them take the bait? Because letting someone think they've won is the fastest way to expose who they really are. They never called me after they left. Didn't even bother with a fake excuse. They thought I was too soft to react. That I'd cry, beg, maybe call the police. They didn't realize I was already 6 steps ahead. I checked my tracking dashboard. My sister had used her old laptop to log into her travel profile. Idiot move. Even with a VPN, the cookies pinged a pattern I'd traced before. I followed the metadata. First stop, Vienna. Of course. My mother loved Austria. She'd once told us, if I ever vanish, check the cafes in the first district. At the time, I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. I opened the burner laptop I kept for operations like this. Booted the secure connection to my contact in Europe, a discreet hacker named Yannick who owed me a favor. I need eyes in Vienna. Hotel. Records. High-end car rentals. Look for 2 American women, 1 blonde, early 50s. 1 brunette, early 30s. They'll be flashing cash. Yannick replied, give me 6 hours. I gave him 2. While I waited, I packed, not out of panic. Out of habit. 2 phones. 1 clean, 1 dirty. 3 passports. All legal. Each under a different shell identity I'd built slowly over the past year. I transferred funds to a fresh account, legitimate this time. Just enough to get close without raising flags. Then I sat down and opened the envelope they had left on the kitchen table. It was handwritten in Magister's tidy, emotionless script. Isla, you're brilliant, but too careful. That's your weakness. You hoard opportunity instead of seizing it. Don't be angry. We're just taking what we deserve. I read it twice, laughed, folded it back up, because it was proof of everything. Not just that they stole from me, but that they believed they were entitled to it. Yannick messaged back. Found them. Park Hyatt Vienna. Top floor suite. Used cash. Booked under Carter. Already flagged by the concierge for aggressive tipping. Typical, they couldn't even steal discreetly. I booked the next flight. Before leaving, I walked into the vault one last time. Ran my hand over the cold steel. It wasn't just a safe. It was a mirror at a place where I once locked away everything I was too afraid to face. Now it was empty, just like them. From a cafe window in Vienna, I watched my mother laugh over wine she didn't pay for, with money that wasn't hers, in a life she thought she'd won. All I could think was, you're running on ghosts. I arrived in Vienna the next morning. No fanfare. No rush. The flight had been quiet, the kind where the hum of the engines feels like background music to your thoughts. I watched the clouds stretch like silk, wondering how long the fantasy would last for them, how long before the illusion started to crack. Because that's what it was, an illusion. Every euro they spent, every trinket they bought, every fake smile they gave to hotel staff. It was all built on a lie, and they had no idea. Yannick met me in the Prater district. We sat in the back of a nondescript bar, far from the tourist traps. He slid a tablet across the table, everything you asked for. Hotel invoices, car rentals, security footage from the lobby. They're careless. I scrolled through the images. There they were, my mother in a black silk coat, her hair pulled tight. Her posture regal even as she handed out tips like she was royalty. Nina wore mirrored sunglasses, loose designer clothes, and a smile that was all teeth. They didn't just look rich, they looked invincible. Yannick cleared his throat. Want me to contact local authorities? I shook my head. Not yet. They hadn't broken any laws yet. And besides, this wasn't about police reports or recovery, this was personal. I set up in a flat 2 blocks from their hotel. Clean, minimalist, ideal for surveillance. I placed 2 micro cameras in their hallway that night, hidden in the ornate sconces. I wanted to know everything, when they left, where they went, how they spent their time. For 5 days, I watched them shop at boutiques, flirt with waiters, and dine like royalty on stolen fantasy. I watched my sister flirt her way into a jewelry auction. I watched my mother lounge on a balcony, reading a novel like her conscience was clear. They hadn't opened the briefcase yet, that much I was sure of, but they would, soon. On the 6th night, they disappeared from the hotel. No checkout, no warning. I accessed their hallway feed. They'd left at 2:47 a.m. 2 large suitcases. 1 briefcase. A hired car. I traced the license plate through Yannick's contact in the transportation registry. Rented under the name Carter. Again. Paid in cash. Destination, Zurich. Of course. Neutral ground. Banking paradise. A place to start converting cash into assets, except what they had wasn't cash. It was cellulose and ink and my silent revenge. I boarded the next train. I always preferred trains. Slower. Quieter. You think more clearly when the world passes by at ground level. I used the time to study their habits. I reviewed every image, every receipt, every move. Nina had no patience. She spent fast, moved fast, burned fast. My mother was more calculating, but her flaw was pride. She liked to be seen. She believed presence was power. I could use that. Zurich was colder, sharper, somehow. Like its skyline had been drawn with a ruler. They checked into the Bauer Lack. Lavish. Classic. Expensive. I got a room across the park with a line of sight into their suite's terrace. That night, I saw it, the briefcase propped on the coffee table. Open, stacks of fake cash inside. They were counting it. My mother poured a glass of wine. Nina flipped through the stacks like a dealer in a casino. They were preparing, planning. Dreaming about how to turn that illusion into something real. I wondered when they'd first feel the doubt. Would it be at a bank, a private buyer, or when someone finally told them, this isn't real money? Did I send a message to an old contact in Swiss banking compliance? It was short. Heads up, suspicious cash movement inbound. 2 American women. Possible forgery attempt. No names. No signatures, just the fuse. The next day, I followed them. They visited 2 financial institutions. Both turned them away. No appointments. No answers. My mother kept her expression calm, but Nina, she was starting to crack. In the reflection of a shop window, I saw her scowl. She hissed something at my mother. Something sharp. I couldn't hear it, but I didn't need to. I knew that expression, frustrated entitlement. Panic without control, the illusion was wearing thin, and I was right there in its shadow. That night, I returned to the terrace viewpoint. The curtains in their suite were drawn, but the lights were still on. They were inside. Likely arguing. Maybe even tearing into each other. I imagined Nina screaming, "Where did you get this money?" And my mother lying, "She gave it to us. It's real." Or maybe they were already starting to blame me. Did they think I'd done this on purpose? I hope so, because the truth was, I'd just begun. They say when a con unravels, the last to know are the ones who believed it most. I watched my mother and sister learn that the hard way, one humiliating rejection at a time. Zurich was suffocating them, not with noise or pressure, but with silence. The kind that settles in expensive places when people start to notice you're not who you claim to be. They'd been rejected from 2 private banks. Politely. Quietly. Firmly, the third rejection came with a smile and a suggestion to have the bills verified. That was the beginning of the end. They returned to the hotel with taut shoulders and clipped footsteps. I saw it all from across the street, sipping coffee like a stranger. The briefcase wasn't in my view anymore. I guessed it had been torn open, maybe thrown against a wall. Or maybe they'd locked it in a closet, hoping the problem would vanish on its own. But fake money doesn't disappear, it lingers, and it exposes. That night, I intercepted a call. Nina tried reaching out to a man in Istanbul. Someone named Arda. She spoke in hushed tones. Pacing the balcony, I boosted the mic from a rooftop dish nearby. I caught enough. No, listen. It's not counterfeit, at least I don't think. It's just. It's not spending. They're rejecting it. She said it was real. It's heavy, crisp, sealed. We thought she stopped short, even saying my name was a wound to her pride. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. They were finally beginning to understand why mother didn't call anyone, not publicly, anyway. But she wrote something that night. I saw her through the camera I'd embedded in the terrace flower pot earlier that week. She sat at the desk in a robe, writing on hotel stationery. Page after page, I knew that writing posture. Calm. Controlled. As if she still believed she could think her way out of what she refused to face. I wondered what she was writing. An explanation, a lie, a plan to run again. Didn't matter. She'd already lost. The next morning, they checked out of the hotel. No scene. No protest. Just silence and dark glasses. I watched from a car nearby as they loaded 2 battered suitcases and the briefcase into a rental. They didn't speak to each other. That told me more than any surveillance feed ever could. They weren't a team anymore, they were sinking. Separately, I tailed them to the train station. They bought tickets for Milan. They were still moving fast. Still hoping to stay ahead of whatever reality was chasing them, but I was already there. Milan felt different. More brittle. They checked into a smaller hotel this time. Nothing luxurious. Nina stayed in the room most of the day, glued to her phone. She tried to message me once. A single line, Isla. Call me. Now I didn't answer. Instead, I traced her location history. She'd attempted to pawn a necklace in Zurich, one of the many gifts she bought with my fake money. She was already selling. That meant desperation. Meanwhile, my mother was visiting a lawyer. I intercepted the appointment through a contact. She asked about asset recovery and legal protection in case of financial misunderstanding. She didn't use the word fraud, but she was thinking it. On the 4th night in Milan, they finally confronted each other. I caught most of it through the hallway mic, just beyond their door. Nina was yelling. You said it was real. You said she trusted us. What the hell did we take, Mom? Monopoly money? My mother's voice was sharp but low. It was sealed. It looked real. She wouldn't give us fake bills unless, silence. And then a word from Nina I never thought I'd hear. She planned this. Another pause. She wanted us to steal it. They finally got it. Everything clicked. The missing pieces. The perfect trap. The silence I'd kept. The invitation I'd handed them without ever saying a word. I didn't trick them, I let them choose to steal from me. That was the real elegance of it. You don't destroy someone by force, you let them walk into a room with one door and convince themselves it leads to freedom, and when they lock it behind them, you show them there are no windows. That night, I booked a suite at their hotel, same floor. End of the hallway. I wanted them to feel it, my presence and knocking and warning, just proximity. I ordered room service, they'd over here. Left the door ajar just enough to let my voice carry when I answered the server. I knew Nina would recognize it. Sure enough, 30 minutes later, I heard footsteps pause outside my door. They beat out a breath, then retreat a good. Let the tension boil, the reveal would come tomorrow, and I wanted them wide awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering just how much I knew. There's a silence that comes just before a confrontation, the kind that hums louder than any scream. That morning, I woke up in Milan and knew it was time. I didn't knock on their door. I waited for Nina to do what she always did. When cornered, pretend she had control, and at exactly 11:12 a.m., she tried. The knock on my hotel room door was soft, almost shy. As if she'd forgotten she stole what she thought was $10 million, I opened it slowly. There she stood, lips tight, sunglasses on despite being indoors. Behind her, just a few feet down the hall, stood my mother. Calm. Cold. As if she'd rehearsed this meeting. I stepped aside and no words, just space. They entered. Nina spoke first. Of course, we need to talk. I said nothing. She paced like a caged cat. My mother stayed near the window, staring down at the street like the answers might be written on a passing bus. Finally, Nina stopped. You knew. A statement. Not a question. You set us up. Still, I said nothing. I wanted them to feel the weight of it. The silence. The reality they could no longer dodge or deny. Gisela, this wasn't just cruel. It was vindictive. Nina snapped, her voice tightening. You made us believe. No, I cut in, voice calm, measured. You chose to believe. I gave you nothing but a locked briefcase. I never told you what was inside. My mother turned then. Her gaze sharp, like a blade she was too old to swing but still kept sharpened. You baited us, she said. You wanted us to fail. I looked directly at her. No. I wanted you to reveal who you've always been. The room settled into a heavy, electric stillness. Then I walked over to the table and opened my laptop. One click. A live stream popped up, the Zurich pawnshop camera footage from 3 days ago. Nina holding up a diamond necklace, pleading with the clerk. I turned the screen toward them. Do you know how easy it was to trace every move you made? I asked softly. You booked your flights under weak aliases. You used my old email for confirmation. You stayed at hotels where I had backdoors into the surveillance systems. My mother folded her arms. What's your point? That you didn't just steal fake money. You exposed yourselves. To banks. To security networks. And soon, to auditors. All because you thought you were smarter than me. I stepped closer. You thought you were still dealing with the girl you dismissed. The girl you used. The one who sat in silence while you tore her down. Nina sank into the chair by the wall, her hands trembling just slightly. You destroyed us, she whispered. I tilted my head. No. You destroyed yourselves. I just gave you the rope. My mother remained upright, defiant. But her eyes were shifting, calculating, adjusting, trying to salvage something. That's when I dropped the final weight. I pulled out a small black flash drive. This is a full log of your movements. Every flag transaction. Every surveillance snippet. Every fake bill traced. I could hand this to Interpol. My mother's jaw clenched, but I won't, I continued. Because this was never about jail. It was about truth. About showing you what happens when the person you raised to feel powerless becomes the one holding all the cards. I placed the drive on the table between us. You can take it. Leave Milan. Start over somewhere else. Or keep running, always wondering when the next doorbell will be a knock from the past. They didn't speak, not for a long moment. Then Nina stood. I hate you, she said, voice barely steady. I nodded once. Good. That means it's over. She walked to the door and didn't look back. Damn, why mother hesitated. She studied me like a puzzle she never quite solved. You could have been one of us, Isla. I smiled. I was never one of you. She walked out. That afternoon, I checked out of the hotel, left the flash drive behind. They would find it, they would live with it, and I flew home. No escort. No headlines. Just peace. I didn't need an apology, I didn't need them to understand, because sometimes, the most satisfying revenge isn't fire or fury, it's the quiet realization, in the hearts of the people who tried to break you, that they never really knew who you were and that now, they never will.